families took advantage of cheaper energy and non-union labor. They left behind a rust belt of obsolete industries, massive unemployment, and in some American backyards, a dangerous legacy of the country's decades of industrial prosperity. In Niagara Falls, New York, many people worked at Hooker Chemical.
Chemicals to us meant a good economy. It meant that my husband was going to continue to be employed. It meant that our mortgage would be paid, our children could have clothes and food on the table. It meant to us a whole lot of realities.
But then, in 1978, Lois Gibbs' 2 children fell ill.
Michael developed asthma and epilepsy, a liver problem, an immune system problem, skin problems. And then after a short while, Melissa got very sick too. And I asked the pediatrician, like, what is going on? And he said, I don't know, you just must be an unlucky mother with a sickly child.
But then Lois happened to read an article about chemical dumps in the city of Niagara Falls. Over 20,000 tons of toxic waste from Hooker Chemical was resurfacing in a 3,000-foot-long trench called Love Canal.
Oh my God, this is the answer. My children are being poisoned.
Residents were convinced that leaking poisons were causing an unusually high number of illnesses and birth defects in the neighborhood.
Why can't you just move everybody for once? We're going to go for
Fear and anger turned workers and housewives into activists who demanded to be relocated at state expense. But the state would only pay to move the 239 families closest to the canal.
As I looked down the street and saw all of the first families moving, I felt very jealous that they were able to leave. But my children were still sick. We were still trapped.
More than 700 families were left behind in their now worthless homes.
They've turned their back on us, put dollar signs on our foreheads, and dismissed us like we were pieces of trash.
The remaining residents kept arguing to be relocated, but after almost 2 years, their patience ran out.
If you just pass the word around, we're not going to do anything violent. We're just going to keep them in the house. Nothing more than that. Body barricade the doors. Nobody else. Everyone's coming out, guys.
This word just in, 2 federal environmental officials are being held hostage at the Love Canal Homeowners Association's headquarters.
If it was so safe at Love Canal, then it was safe enough for them to live there until we all got out. So we called up the White House and said we were holding 2 of your EPA officials here, and we were going to hold them here until we get evacuated out of Love Canal.
President Carter today declared that prudence dictates the residents should be relocated.
Here's to the homeowners and all our hard work.
It was a big victory for Lois Gibbs and her neighbors. But as they made toxic cleanup a national issue, some 30,000 other dangerous waste sites were discovered across the country. Americans now had something new to fear, the very ground they walked on. Attempts to right past wrongs had led to a decade of legislation. In the early 1970s, the courts ordered that schools be integrated through busing. In Boston, the order went into effect in 1974. Phyllis Ellison was 15 and going to her new school, South Boston High.
The atmosphere on the bus, at first we were just like regular children. We talked, we giggled, and talked about what we thought school was going to be like. Then we were escorted by police officers. And I just didn't really know why we, the black students, would need police escorts to go to school.
South Boston has always been a white neighborhood. I think everyone was taking it out on the blacks and blaming them, which at the time, well, now I realize it wasn't right, but being young, and we held it against the blacks personally. I and many other people from the neighborhood were throwing rocks at the buses.
And they were chanting, "Go home, we don't want you here."
There was many fights. There was fights every day. There was more police in school than students at times.
Boston public schools lost 25% of their students because many parents refused to bus their children to other neighborhoods.
And my kid will never go to the Thompson. I'll die first. Right. I got rights. Let them move into our houses.
We felt that our kids were being used as sacrificial lambs on this altar of liberalism. The affluent whites who didn't send their kids to public schools, Ted Kennedy, and a few other jerks that would appear on television telling us what to do with our kids.
All over the country where forced busing went into effect, there was resistance from both whites and blacks.
We are in a war, and we're going to win this one.
But nowhere did the conflict remain as bitter as at South Boston High. In December, a white student, 17-year-old Michael Faith, was stabbed, and all hell broke loose.
You could see the mob outside of the school. I was inside of the office, and all I can hear was, "He's dead. That nigger stabbed him. He's dead. Kill the niggers. Kill the niggers." And the glass shattering.
I broke windows. I tipped over police cars. There was so much hatred.
Finally, the word came out that he wasn't dead. When they took him out the front door, Michael Faith, all bandaged up, he looked just like a mummy, and he had blood all over him. And I yelled out, "Niggas eat shit," which I would never say in a million years, but that's what happened.
Most of us were crying. We were petrified. I felt if they got a hold of any one of the students that we would die.
Worrying out how they were going to get them out of there, how they were going to get the students out. And so they sent decoys. They sacrificed about 10 buses, knowing they were going to get destroyed.
Black students ran to other buses at the rear, out of harm's way. Forced busing was an intrusion of government policy that nobody seemed to like. But the buses kept rolling. And the violence continued into the 1980s. It added to a growing disrespect for the established order.
We just began to see ourselves as a society without a lot of rules. Our institutions were going through crises, whether that was the breakup of families, great increase in crime and drug use, immorality, abortion.
Conservative opposition to liberal policies intensified as more and more Americans became fed up with the strife caused by busing, abortion rights, equality for women, and equal rights for another group seeking public acceptance, homosexuals. In San Francisco, gays got political support from Mayor George Moscone and encouragement from the gay city supervisor Harvey Milk. But there was a shocking backlash to gay liberation on November the 27th, 1978.
Both Mayor Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk have been shot and killed.
The killer was Dan White, an anti-gay city supervisor who'd resigned from the Moscone administration but wanted his job back.
am very confident that I will be reappointed to my job.
But he was not, and he took revenge, killing Mayor Moscone and Supervisor Milk. That night, 40,000 people came out to the streets of San Francisco.
Traffic stopped. People would talk to each other. People would cry. And there were a lot of straight people who were so galvanized by the gravity of this, they said, "Oh, I get it. I get it now." It broke your heart because of what happened to cause that, but it did give one hope.
At White's trial, the so-called Twinkie defense, temporary insanity caused by stress and too much junk food, got White a sentence of only 7 years and 8 months.
When that verdict was announced, all I could think and scream out, I was at home, I said, "I knew it, I knew it, I knew it." We marched to City Hall. There was property damage. There was no loss of life. There was expiation of anger and seeking of justice. I think we really showed, don't mess with us.
What some liberals saw as a corrective to injustice, some conservatives saw as signs of a disintegrating nation. Pastor John Hinkle of Los Angeles.
That's when the Lord spoke to me and said, "I want you to go to Washington, May 1st, 1979, with 100,000 people."
I just said, "Oh, Glenn, we've got to go. Nothing like this has ever happened before."
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Father, there is spreading across our land today.
Believing that she had been born again and saved, Marilyn Noorda says she wanted to save her country.
The point was to pray for America, knowing that as we cried out to God, He would hear our prayer and that America would turn.
Praise God. And oh, what a beautiful sight.
Don't curse the darkness, light a candle. And so we began to think about how we could use this crisis as an opportunity to turn everything around.
Praise you, Jesus.
Many religious leaders had influence far beyond their local community. We began, as conservatives, an outreach to them, putting together the moral majority. We will be the alternative to the Carter administration.
Praise you, Jesus. Praise you, Jesus.
I would like to offer a toast at this time.
At the very beginning of 1978, President Carter was the guest of the Shah of Iran.
Because of the great leadership of the Shah, Iran is an island of stability in one of the more troubled areas of the world.
Iran was anything but stable.
Within 7 or 8 days, there were riots already in Iran. There was shouting in the rooftops, Allahu Akbar, God is great, down with the Shah, Margbar Shah. One really cannot understand how much Iranian people hated the Shah.
And now they wanted the Ayatollah Khomeini, who had inspired so many of them with taped sermons from his exile in France. A year later, the Shah, whose secret police had spread terror across Iran, was forced to flee the country. Jubilant Iranians welcomed back Khomeini.
It was as if the Messiah had landed in Iran.
The 78-year-old cleric wanted to rid Iran of Western influence. He called the United States the Great Satan. He inspired fervent anti-Americanism in millions of Iranians. The loss of an important ally to an unyielding enemy was just the first blow in a series of misfortunes that confounded Americans in 1979. In March, America's worst nuclear accident caused a radioactive release at 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania.